Well, good evening, everyone. It is time for Licorice Pizza. That's right. And of course, Don Despaw. I'm your host today or this evening, I should say. Oh yeah, were you say? Well, Donnie, get to the point. What are you going to talk? Genesis. You know, Genesis. Yeah, the band Genesis. I'm going to go and pick my five favorite albums by this band. Number five, number four, number three, and number two, and number one. My favorites. Now, yours might be completely different, and to me, these are my five. You can almost do 10. I decided to narrow it down and just do five. They released so many great albums. And it's a fine line between some of them. There's I don't know. I had to kind of think about it, and but made my choice. Genesis, great band, of course. Got their start around 1968. And their first album, 69, was it? 68, 69? From Genesis to Revelation. Makes sense, right? I like that title. Not my favorite Genesis album. That was one that, oh, that was an album. They're trying to find their sound. They just weren't there yet, you know. Genesis had a unique sound with Peter Gabriel back in that time period, early 70s. So, drum roll, please. I don't have a snare drum with me. All right. Anyway, number five, uh, I love the album Trick of the Tail. This was the last album that Peter Gabriel was involved with as the lead singer of Genesis. And a lot of fans says, no, you can't quit. He left Genesis. And then they went to find their next lead singer and auditioned like 100 people for the job. All that work, and and then they said, Phil, why don't you? Say, I'll try it. Yeah, he tried it. He's in. He got the job, rightly so. All right, Peter Gabriel. Yep, left the band Genesis. Trick of the Tail album. They released two albums, by the way. 1976. The other album, great album, another great one, Wind and Withering. That's a great album. It wasn't on my top five, but it's still a very, very solid album. And then Steve Hackett, great guitar player, he left the band after, I believe, recording on that particular album. Then he left, Steve Hackett. At number four, Foxtrot. Great album, 1972 by Genesis 2. And again, this is in their period of progressive rock. You know, like bands like Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Rush would be, progressive rock. Um, but I digress. Yeah, Foxtrot, 1972, just not a bad song on that album at all. Not a bad tune at all on that record. And let me see. Number three, I am gonna go with Abacab. People are saying, Ray, you're saying what? Yeah, Abacab. Love this album. 1981. I think it was a huge breakthrough year for Genesis because the Phil Collins album Face Value that came out. I can feel it in the air tonight. 1981, and they were released, I believe, exactly the same time in 1981, or pretty close. That year, that was a hit. Feel It in the Air Tonight, Abacab, No Reply at All is off that album. That was a hit, and they started really to climb, commercially becoming more successful, more radio friendly, you might say. But Abacab, yeah, I love that album, Abacab. And that was my number three. And my number two, well, let's see what we have. The number two album um, for me would be The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Fantastic album. Um, Considered by a lot of Genesis fans as their favorite album. Fly in a Windshield, great tune off that. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Cuckoo Cocoon, that's another great, In the Cage, another great song. Yeah, really solid album. Love that particular double album. I believe it was back in the day, and that was number two. So number one, here we go. Drum roll, please again. Um, Selling England by the Pound, 1973. Love that album. Selling England by the Pound. Genesis, Cinema Show. Yep, great song. Fifth of Fifth. Was that? Yeah, that was off that one too. Yeah, that's an album. You just it's not dance music at all. Because right, you just have to kind of chill, relax, turn it up, and just listen to the whole album. It's great. But that's my number one album of Genesis. Some worthy mentions: Duke, solid album by Genesis as well. And then there were three. I think that's a good album as well. And yeah, Wind and Withering, also very good album. Calling All Stations. Yeah, that was what, 91, 92. We're in that time period too. They were still popular in the early 90s. Genesis, what a career. I think about how many decades this band had. And the really thing about Genesis, they all became very successful. Some more so commercially successful, like Phil Collins off the chart as a solo artist from that band. Peter Gabriel, very successful. Just an amazing performer and singer in his own right. His solo stuff is just crazy good. It's amazing. And Phil Collins' career during the mid 1980s, 85. No Jack. I'll do a show on Phil Collins, so I don't want to say too much about Phil Collins, but No Jacket Required. I mean, you couldn't turn on the radio back in the mid 80s and not hear that stuff. Unbelievable. Mike and the Mechanics, Mike Rutherford, who was with the band about right from the beginning, and had Mike and the Mechanics, another very successful band. And Tony Banks, of course, he wrote some soundtracks for movies, did the music there, producing some albums and all. And Steve Hackett had a good career as well. And all of them. I mean, a pretty amazing group. And that is about it. I could go on and on and on about Genesis, but I think the main thing about that band is their progressive side of their progressive side in the 1970s. Mainly the early 70s, progressive rock, and I think the change came, and then there were three. With Follow You, Follow Me. I think that's when the songs became a little bit shorter, and that was a single, and they started, like I say, becoming radio friendly, on the top 40, and then Duke came out, Turn Me On Again, and or Turn It On Again, I believe the name of that song. Boy, it's hard to remember all that stuff, but. That was off Duke, that album Duke from '79, hit after hit after hit after hit. Phil Collins, same way, yeah, and you knew they were just, Invisible Touch too. We'll mention that album from Genesis. Very successful. This thing, I'm trying to think, that might have been their most successful album. I think it was. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was their Invisible Touch, great single. And what else? Oh, they had so many tunes off that thing. That 1986 it was. Now, we get to the part where one of my favorite parts of doing this is what is your favorite slice, underrated slice of a song? Well, I would say Cinema Show. A lot of people that are started listening to Genesis, say, in 1981, might not have ever heard the album, Selling England by the Pound. Cinema Show is off that album. It's, it's just a great, great tune. I think that's a very underrated slice right there. Yeah, absolutely. And my favorite slice, yes, same song, the Cinema Show by Genesis. And that's just a fantastic album, great song. And that will do it. That will do it for this edition of Licorice Pizza. Hope you enjoyed the show. Genesis was our artist for this particular program. And don't forget, folks, to like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, so until next time, we'll see you.